Investigating fraud during the pandemic. When the government leaders shut down the country in 2020, the federal government also gave out $800 billion in forgivable loans to small businesses in the hopes of keeping the economy going. But that led to many instances of documented fraud. About 500 defendants so far have been criminally charged with defrauding business relief programs. So right now I am joined by award-winning ProPublica journalist and the author of the new book, Pandemic Inc., Chasing the Capitalists and Thieves Who Got Rich While We Got Sick. David McSwane, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So in this past week, you took to Twitter to share your journey on the reporting for this book. You wrote, "Let me tell you a crazy story. It's consumed 2 years of my life. As COVID-19 shut down the world in April of 2020, I decided to follow the money. I began with a call to a no-name federal contractor who'd somehow landed a $35 million deal for masks. Hours later, I'm on a private jet." Quite a way to start there. So, David, this kind of started for you like many of us. You had been stuck in your apartment for weeks. What was it that initially signaled you to the fact that wide-scale fraud was taking place?
Well, yeah, these were those really scary weeks. I'm here in Washington, D.C., and we see that the Trump administration's trying to catch up, and there's just this outflow of hundreds of millions of dollars. And we started looking at the contractors who were getting these awards, including the one you just mentioned, and realized these were people we hadn't seen before. It's awarded so quickly, there seems to be no vetting. And, before you know it, I'm on that private jet. I ask, how do you have the 6 million N95 masks you claim to have for the Veterans Administration and its hospitals? And he admits he doesn't have the masks, and that really set me off, just digging into people that we had to rely on because we weren't ready to address the pandemic.
You also investigate PPP loan fraud, people taking advantage of unemployment benefits. What are you finding in addition to lack of oversight?
We're going to be catching up to this for years.
Sure.
Each one of these cases needs to be, prosecutors and law enforcement are going to have to tackle these one at a time. And, in the Paycheck Protection Program, which really prioritized speed above all else to get money to small businesses and make sure that employees could feed their families and pay the rent, it's just unprecedented fraud and waste.
Right, ultimately the hardworking American people paying for it. Your reporting also, though, really brought you face to face with a lot of these people committing these crimes, even catching one of these confrontations on camera. So let's take a look.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk to Mr. Wexler.
Leave.
I'm not on your property.
Leave.
I'm not on your property. Are these sterile vials you have here? How are you sterilizing these vials, sir?
You're gonna get hit by
Are these sterile?
Okay, David, so walk us through what we just saw. What
Sure.
brought you to that warehouse, and what did you find?
This was a company called Filikit. We noticed, just looking over who's getting these deals, that they formed right around the outset of the pandemic. About 6 days later, very quickly, got a $10 million contract with the Federal Emergency Management Agency to provide COVID-19 test kits. And at the time, the country, we were lagging behind on testing. It was a huge problem. It set us back in our ability to address the spread. And looking at it, these look like the PCR tests, the real ones where you have to send them to a laboratory. So we put it in a story, and I heard from, as a result of that, from state health workers who told me, hey, we've seen these test tubes and they're completely unusable. And I happened to be in Texas when we were sort of chasing this down, so I stopped by the warehouse, and they weren't too happy to see me.
In what way are the American people left to pay the price for the government's mishandling of this? And is it still happening as more money is still being put in to pandemic response?
Right. Well, it's gotten a little better just by virtue of having a little bit of time and weeding out some of these fraudsters. But we really were so ill-prepared. After about a decade of defunding the Strategic National Stockpile, we had only something like 1% of what we needed in terms of like masks and gloves to address that first wave. So we had no choice but to reach out to these buccaneers and pirates, as one of my characters refers to them. So they just had an opportunity to take the federal government and states for a ride, and taxpayers got screwed. So the hope is this book really is a blueprint of exactly what not to do when we're faced with such a crisis or a pandemic, which scientists say is inevitable.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, do you think that those responsible will be held accountable? I mean, we know pleas have been entered, we know charges have been filed, but in the end here, do you think everyone will be held accountable? And in the end, what does justice look like?
I don't think we're going to catch them all. I think we're going to see some really, as I account for in the book, some really crazy, just silly instances where the government just did not do due diligence and people took advantage, and those people might be made an example of.
Right. Wow. Well, David, excellent reporting. Thank you so much for talking with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And of course, his book, Pandemic Inc., is available right now.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.